Hello, Maurice Limon here again to talk to you about how to use your knowledge of trumpet fingerings to find your new French horn fingerings. And with this logical approach, it's actually quite easy because you already have a strong knowledge of trumpet fingerings and you can use that to find all of your French horn fingerings. So let's start with the F side. Here in our first two examples we have the pitches F sharp and C. We're going to use our lower pitches for the French horn. So if you think that F sharp, what's that fingering up one octave on the trumpet? And the same thing with that C. You think that C up one octave on the trumpet, and you have your trumpet fingerings, or French horn fingerings. So our F sharp up an octave on trumpet would be 2, and our C up one octave in the staff would be open. Now let's look over to our third and fourth example, E flat and G sharp, and think, what is that E flat up one octave on the trumpet? Think of that fingering, and then look at that G sharp and think, what's the fingering for that G sharp up one octave on the trumpet? And that will give you your French horn fingering. I'll give you a second to think about it. If you said that up one octave from that E flat is second finger and up one octave from that G sharp is 2 and 3, you'd be correct. So you use your knowledge of trumpet fingerings up the octave from the written French horn pitch to find your fingerings on the F side. Now let's talk about the B flat side. This is going to use a similar method of finding the pitches, but instead of thinking up one octave, you're going to think up one perfect fifth. Think your trumpet fingerings, and this will give you the fingering with the trigger for the B flat side of the French horn. So if you look, we have our F sharp, and up a perfect fifth is C sharp. So our fingering on the B flat side of the horn for F sharp would be the same as your trumpet fingering for that C sharp. So our French horn fingering for F sharp will be trigger 1 and 2. And for our second example, the C, up a perfect fifth from C is G, and we think our trumpet fingering for G and our B flat side of the horn, French horn fingering, would be trigger open. Now let's try an example for you. Look at E flat and G, and I want you to think of what those two fingerings would be. Think up one perfect fifth from E flat to B flat, and what's that trumpet fingering? And then think up a perfect fifth from G to D, and what's that trumpet fingering? And it will give you your French horn B flat side with the trigger fingering. I'll give you a second to think. If you said trigger 1 for both of those answers, you would be correct. It will take a little practice to think up a fifth, but once you know all your trumpet fingerings, thinking up a fifth from the written French horn pitch is really quite simple, and it will help you find out all of your B flat fingerings. Now, there are only two exceptions to this rule, so let's talk about that for a second. The only two exceptions for our B flat side of the horn would be trigger 2 and 3 and trigger 1 and 2 for our A flat slash G sharp fingering. The preferred fingering for A flat slash G sharp is actually trigger 2 and 3. If you think about it, up a fifth, the trumpet fingering for those notes would be different. But the preferred fingering is actually trigger 2 and 3. If you just commit that to memory, you'll save a lot of time and headache. Now the other fingering is a useful alternate for when the occasion should arise, but for A flat and G sharp, you're going to use trigger 2 and 3. And for that second space, A, you're going to think trigger 1 and 2. Now, our transposition method up a fifth would tell you to play that note as open, but the preferred fingering is trigger 1 and 2, and open is a good alternate, but you should stick to trigger 1 and 2 wherever possible. So I hope this method of figuring out your fingerings using your trumpet knowledge helps. It's foolproof, and once you figure this out, it'll make your life on French horn and the transition much, much easier. Now it's going to take a little bit of practice, but you'll get it and it will make things much simpler.